As someone who has been writing for over 5 years, I think like 6, 7 years, I'm not entirely sure, I have been using Notion a ton to take my notes, and in particular to do my world building and to keep track of what I've decided exists within my different little universes. The first time I used Notion for my writing, I think it was in fact more to take notes about what I wanted to change in revisions for one of my drafts, but then it sort of evolved from there and it became my second brain as a writer. A lot of people find Notion super intimidating, and the first time that they open it, they're like, I don't know anything, I don't know what's going on. And a lot of people will have this vision of Notion as being super aesthetic, super complex, because all they see is videos of people using it in that way. But the reality and the reason why I love Notion is because it's in fact super simple. It is just a note-taking app, and you can make out of it whatever you want. That doesn't work for everyone. Some people need structure, some people need existing things that are already in place. You do have templates with Notion, but you still need to understand the basic principles of them. And I think for some people that's either too much or not enough. And some people just prefer taking notes with pen and paper, which also great, and I sometimes do as well. But if you want to use Notion the way that I do, and I will show you how I use it, then this is the right video for you. I'm going to be making a little series on how I use Notion as a writer, and this is our very first episode where I'm just going to give you a tour of my setup, and then we're going to start with the very basics. Just a quick note that this is what we will ultimately be creating. However, I started filming this when I had a simpler setup, and then I made it more aesthetic later on and decided to film how to make that as well. So you'll first get a simpler version of the writing setup, and that's what we'll be creating first. And then we'll get to the next step, which is to make it more aesthetic and adding some of these new features in this version. So first of all, let's have a quick look at my homepage for my writing space. This is my Notion setup for writing. Now, I can take you to my main homepage. I have two homepages essentially. Notion has its own homepage, which was a new feature at some point, and I did not have that initially, which is why I created my own homepage. Beforehand, they didn't have this, but now they do, and it's got your recently visited pages. If you use the calendar, it will have the upcoming events that you have. There's a learning section where it gives you guides that you can read, that is theirs, so their own guides on how to use Notion templates, etc. And then some featured templates that you can use. I never ever use this page. I don't need this page. I have created my own homepage, so this is it. You can see I'm using the app here and not the browser version of Notion, but you can do the exact same things on the browser version. And you have this little toggle thing top left, which is basically the menu, so you can have it sticky or non-sticky. When you hover over the left hand side of your page, it comes back. We're gonna go back on my little left panel and go in my writing homepage. So I've created this other homepage called writing. On the left side, my left column has some writing resources. If I go in this page, my writing resources are pages for craft books that I have read and courses. And then I have a useful link section, which I only have one in, which is Hello Future Me's channel, where there's a lot of world building resources. In the craft book section, you can see all the craft books I've read. And the Save the Cat writes a YA novel in particular. So this has all of my notes for each chapter, but the most important one is building the beat sheet. And in there, I have all of my notes for each act that I took from reading the young adult version of the book. So going back at the top to writing, that was writing resources. I have book ideas. This is a gallery view of every book idea I've ever had. I'm not going to scroll down because not all of them have images, and you can sort of read through the text if they don't have an image. But this is essentially all of the ideas I've got that haven't been developed yet into more than that. It's literally just sitting as an idea. And that's how I start. So I do explain my process in other videos, but for instance, Project Alien is the latest. And this was started as just putting some image inspiration all of the notes I had handwritten for ideas and then like bullet point ideas of what I had. This is because I wanted to visualize the haircut that Themis had. And I was like, this is sort of what she looks like, but this is literally a picture from a magazine, I think. Going back, I have an archive sections. This is for anything like events or stuff like that I took notes in that I don't want to fully delete, but I just want to keep somewhere that I don't care about because I'm not actively using those pages. I also have a world building section. You can see these little arrows. They're signifying that this is a link back to another page within another page. So the location of this page is not here. This is just a link to the location of that page, because my world building pages are actually inside of each of my book ideas. So my book sections. For instance, Project Snowstorm is here in outlining, and if I were to click on it, I have Project Snowstorm world building that sits right here, and I have linked it into this little box out so that I can refer back to it and click on it directly and find the world building section immediately. So that's why I've got all of these on the bottom left. And then I decided to split my books into ideas, then outlining, then drafting, then revising, then querying, and shelved. Unfortunately, The Art of Summoning Demons is currently in this section. So that is my setup, is how I like to set it up. I don't know if this makes sense. I feel like outlining should be next to ideas and then drafting on the right, and then like I almost feel like I should read from left to right and not top bottom, top bottom, top bottom. I feel like that would make a lot more sense. I'm just gonna move it. Wow, that's crazy. I'm changing my mind about this. And querying needs to go here. And I need to create one more space. There we go. Okay, this actually makes more sense, right? So we've got ideas, outlining, drafting, revising, querying, shelved. So for instance, in the idea section, I currently have Lockhart and Beckett's book 2. So I have some ideas for a second book in my Office for Monsters book series. It's not really a series, it's currently one book existing. In my outlining section, I currently have technically Project Snowstorm because I did start the outlining process. So this does exist in this section. And then The Art of Summoning Demons book 2 also has a very simple page. You can see I've not done much with it. And I don't know if I should go with the shelved one. That's sad, but yes, probably. In the drafting section, I still have Knights of Death because technically I have not finished this book. I still have the very end to write, but I did finish outlining the end, which is why I have a new outline section in there. If I go back to my writing, I have in the revision process 3 books, which is a problem, and I need to get some of them through to querying. That'd be great. So I have Rules of Survival, which is the one I've been writing most recently. I have Space Princess Project, and I have An Office for Monsters. And I would love to revise all of them, and I cannot do everything at once. An Office for Monsters has a very simple page because, again, this was more at the beginning of me using Notion. Space Princess Project a little bit better because I did use the world building in this one quite intensely. So if anything, this is the first book where I fully developed a Notion page for it, and I started with prepping, writing, revising, and then other books within the series. Actually, it makes more sense to have it in this page. I should do the same for The Art of Summoning Demons. In prepping, I have resources, which is actually links for some of the ideas. This was when I was doing research for my world building, and so I wrote down all of this information, and I have a page where all of it is kept together. And then I, from that, started an actual world building gallery page. If I go in this page, you can sort of see things like the spaceships has what the spaceships look like, their types, and I can toggle these, and you can see that, you know, I've got transports, cargo, or passengers for hire, like cruise ships, ferries, intergalactic space liners, etc. So I put all of my research for the world building in here so that I had this information, and I could refer back to it every time I was using it. If I go into rules of survival, which is my most recent, this is what the page looks like. It's a little bit simpler. So we've got prepping, outlining, writing, revising. In the prepping section, I have my unfiltered thoughts, which is literally the idea page I showed you in the gallery. Then I have the world building page, the characters page, which are two gallery pages. So if I click on it, this is a gallery with world building things. And if I go back and show you the characters, similarly, it's a gallery with my characters. I classified them by main crew, secondary crew, past crew, dead. And I think I've got Valaya somewhere. Oh yeah, and others over here. If I go back here on my main page, I also have my outlining process. So the main big outline page, which is this one, and it's a table where I have Save the Cat on one hand and the character-based stuff from Character Arcs by Kim Wayland in the other column. And then but I have my detailed scenes outlines. So for instance, for Act 2A, these were my detailed scenes outlines. So there were bullet points, and then I toggled them off when I was done. In the writing section, I have anything that I've decided while I was writing. To be fair, plot fixes should go in revisions, I think. Yeah, this is in revising because I started this page as I started the revisions. But in the writing section, I have my first aid fixes. So things I took notes of, I need to fix once I'm done with writing. And then the plot fixes are bigger things I want to change. So that's my setup, and that's kind of how I work. As you can see, every single book page is slightly different because my way of working will evolve. I used to be a penciller, I'm not so much anymore, I'm more of an outliner, so outlining did not really exist in this space before, and now it does. Some of those pages are very old and I never really changed what they look like because I didn't care. I just had a single page of notes in there so I could keep track of it, and that was it. And then some of those pages that are more recent have a lot more complexity to them and a lot more layers. We're going to figure out how to get to that setup. The first way we're going to use Notion is how I initially used it, and the reason why I don't find it intimidating is because I used it that way in the first place. And the second thing we're going to do is actually try to recreate these pages. Initially, you get some onboarding sections. So this is the browser-based version. I think this will give me templates, and I don't really want templates, so I'm going to skip for now. Notion with the desktop app, skip. Okay, let's close this. We start off with a getting started page, which explains to you how to use the very basics. So it tells you how you've created an account with Notion. You can click anywhere below and type / and see where you can create a text block, heading, etc. You can scroll down and see all of the things you can create. You can type /page to add a new page and nest anything anywhere. Find, organize, add new pages using the sidebar to the left, which is here, and check out the to-do list on the left. So if we check out the to-do list on the left, it has an actual to-do list with, this is, I believe, a database. Okay, and then there's a monthly budget, interesting, and a weekly to-do list, interesting. So we're going to delete all of this. Move to trash. Obviously we're still on a page that doesn't exist anymore, so this is what it looks like. So we're in this section private. We're gonna add a new page, and we're gonna say it's an empty page, and we're gonna call it writing. I will move this sidebar away the same way that I was doing on the app, and I'll open this one again so we can compare, and you can see both. So this is the very first page, and it doesn't have to be anything complex, and I'm just going to show you how I first started using Notion. Say I had a new project, I would do /page, new page. And in this new page, I would start writing what my new idea was. So for instance, I'm going to type idea number 1. So that's our title. And then I click in the page and I can write notes. If you do plus and then space, it will create a new list. And that's how I would create a list. So I would just then be like, idea number 1. You can type all of your little ideas. And this is just a note-taking app. So this is all you need if all you want to use it for is take notes. So I would probably start this way. And then I might say, oh, I have another idea. So I'm going back to my homepage of writing and I might create a new page and call it idea number 2. And then maybe this one is just basic text, doesn't even need bullet points. And this is just me taking notes. Okay, so maybe this is my second page, and as you can see, it's just a page with text in it, and that's all I need. So in my writing section, I now have 2 ideas, and they're both pages. They have little icons that have not been changed, so they're just little page icons. You can make it aesthetic. You can just change the icon here. That's your first slightly aesthetic step. You have emojis, and then you have actual icons, which you can color. So for instance, because this is an idea, I might want a light bulb. Oops, there we go. Maybe a light bulb for an idea, and I like the idea that it's yellow because that's what a light bulb looks like. So here we go. I have 2 little yellow light bulbs, and it's slightly more aesthetic, but it's still very, very, very basic. So say now you're starting to have several ideas, and maybe I'll create a new page, and one of your ideas, say idea number 3, becomes a full-fledged, like it's further than an idea. It becomes a project. So I'm just going to call it project number 3. And you can also add an icon here directly while you're inside of the page. So I'll click add icon, and because this is further, it's a project, I'm gonna find like a file or folder, but like a little file with a plus, document plus. That's great. I'm gonna put it in blue. And maybe this project has a ton of notes in there. So let's copy and paste the whole lorem ipsum text. There we go. So say you've got a bunch of notes. Maybe this one even has some bullet points. So there's a bunch of bullet points here, for instance, and you start to want to organize it a little bit more. So maybe your first step is to add headers. So you can have heading 1, for instance, and you can be heading 1. And this can be this section, and then maybe you have a second heading, and this, I'll just type heading 2. And then maybe you have another heading 1. So heading 1, second heading 1. So maybe you start having something that has more organization inside of it. And this is very much looking almost like you taking notes in university. This is essentially a page with headers. This could exist on Word, right? This could exist on Google Doc. It could exist anywhere else. It doesn't have to be Notion. But say you want to access things a little bit more easily. Obviously, you have on the right-hand side your heading. So you can click directly to heading 2, to second heading, etc. So you have on this side a little table of contents that you can click directly. But say these are just notes and you want to start having more pages within your project. So maybe all of these are actually your outline or your summary or something. So I'm just going to create a new page at the top of this page, and I'm going to call it outline. And I go back to this project and I want to select everything, cut it, and then Control V. Onto this page. So this is now my outline, and we now have a page within a page within a page, because we have our writing page inside of which we have project number 3, inside of which we have our outline. And that's the principle of using Notion. That is the base idea of Notion. It's nesting. So the point of using Notion is that you can put a page within a page within a page, and you can continuously do that. I didn't really have to copy and paste this inside of this. I could just have renamed this outline and then created a new page for project number 3 and put the outline inside of that new page. There's several ways to do it, but the whole point is nesting, and that's why you end up with something that looks a lot more complex. But you don't start with the nesting, you start with your notes. You start taking notes, you start with the very basics, and then you make it organized when you start having more and more items to organize. If you have one book, you might just put your book on your table, but then you might be like, okay, I'm starting to have like 10 books. I need a small bookshelf. So you buy a small bookshelf and you put all your books in your small bookshelf. And then you have like 30 to 50 books and you're like, holy shit, how do I find which book I wanted to read next, or which one is this genre or whatever? You start organizing your books into your bookshelf so that maybe you do it alphabetically, maybe you do it by color, maybe you do it by genre, and you go like, all of my thrillers are over there, all of my fantasy are over there. So that's how you work with Notion. It's the same way. You start with the one book and then you build your bookshelf. So this is how I initially started using Notion, and that's how I would have started creating this writing homepage. It didn't start this way. It started with just a page that I then nested inside of another page that I then nested inside of another page. And that's what I ended up with in the end. But it started just this way. So let's delete these, and now we're gonna go with the second method. Now that you know the proper way to use Notion, we're going to ignore it and we're going to build out this page so that you can see if you wanted to do it the other way around and start with your organization and then put things inside of your organized page, then you can do it that way. I personally think to not find Notion intimidating, it's better to use the other way, to start with just basic notes and then evolve them. But feel free to ignore that and jump into this part where we're just going to build this out. So the first thing you might notice is that this is 4 columns, and that's what we're going to start with. It's also wider screen because my home pages, I like them to take the whole page. So as you can see, when you just type it, it's all centered, right? Like this is all in the middle. But for a database sort of page, like something that will hold more pages, I like to use the full width. So top right, the 3 little bullet points, you have a few things that you can modify. The first thing I would do is to make this full width. The second thing I would do is to make this mono because I liked the look of that, and that's what I did here. And the third thing I would do is make it small text so more can fit, especially if I have 4 columns. It just looks better to my eye. That's all it is. So you can see this writing title is the same as this writing title. So I would type columns and you will see your options. You can even make 5. You can also turn things into columns. So you might have a bunch of items and you can be like, I want to turn all of these into a 4 column setup, and you can do that after the fact. So let's build it out starting with 4 columns. And you can see now that this little temporary text that says what you can do for commands exists in all 4 columns. Second thing you might notice is also that this has a cover that makes it slightly aesthetic and an icon. So we can do that, absolutely. Let's add an icon. And I think this is an emoji. And I just type book. And I think this was this one. But you can change that to anything else. And then add cover, and this will create the space for a cover, change cover, and then you have a gallery which has some gradients. You can upload your own image, and you can also go on Unsplash, and Unsplash will have free imagery. And I quite like this, for instance, and you can reposition it, move it up, for instance, because I wanted more of that pink. There we go. I feel like this is quite cool. And there you go. It doesn't look exactly the same because it's a different image. In the writing columns, we're going to have a column on the left that sort of works as a little content page for my world building pages and some other items like writing resources, book ideas, etc. So the first thing we'll need is to create these pages. Page. And our first page was these writing resources. So I'll call it writing resources. And if I go back here, this is our page. It exists here. It doesn't have an icon. So I can change the icon and go in there. And I actually don't remember what I used. This little learning book. Okay. So book, this one, I think it's in yellow. Cool. I then have another page for book ideas. So all we're doing now is creating pages. We're not doing anything special, but you can see right here that my line goes on to the right. So this is not inside of the column. However, I can still do this. I can still create my page. What is it? Book ideas. Book ideas. And if I go back, I can then drag it into the column. So by dragging it right below this, change the icon. I liked this for book ideas. That was cute. And then archived, that's just for old pages I don't need anymore. You can create one now if you want. As you can see, I accidentally clicked correctly this time under the right column, so you can see the text has a soft return here. So page, archived, cool. And then if I go back here, I can change this icons to like a folder. And then I have this section of world building pages. Now we can't link back to items that don't exist yet, but I can create this call out. And this is what that is. It is a call out. So call out. And you can see it takes the full length and it doesn't look the same. So first of all, we're going to drag it into the column. Nice. Second, we're going to change this icon. And I had a little planet, I think. Yeah, for world building. And I think it's blue, maybe. Yes, it is blue. And the other thing as well is this is just a gray color background. So I can change the color here to default background and it'll just have an outline. And that's all it is. So first I'll call it world building. And we'll just do like a little bullet point list. That way you can see what we'll have. Change this so that it looks more like a title. You can change it into a header. And I think, is that what I did? No, that doesn't look like an actual header. Because I think it's quite big. So instead, I'll keep it in text, but make it bold and change the color of the text here. So when you're selecting your text, you have this little bar that appears. You can change your text to something else, a heading, a quote, etc. You can make it bold, italics, underlined, strike through. You can mark as code, which I don't fuck with that. You can add a link to somewhere, and you can also change your text color. So if I click on here, you will have a background color which will highlight it, and then you'll have a text color, and I will use blue here. So that's what we've got, and this looks basically the same. Next we have 3 more columns to use. So our first column is going to have ideas, then outlining, then drafting. So let's go into our first column and we'll do backslash. And we shall take a heading 3 because I feel like they're quite big. Is this what I did? I think this is a heading 3. Yes, it is a heading 3. And we'll just call it ideas. And then if you select the little, 6 dots on the left, this selects the whole sort of zone where that text is. And that's where you can change the color background so that it takes the full length. So if I were to select just my text, and then change the background color to yellow, you can see it just highlights the word only. So Control-Z that. And if I select my whole section where the text is, I can then change the color of the background to yellow, and then it does it for the full length. And we have a little bit of space on the left so that it looks better. That's the only reason. So I've just, added a space. So that's what I did for these. Now that I've got one and I like it, I can drag it and copy it. So as I drag, I option drag and put it into the second or third column. Oh, I have a space I can delete, and put it as well in the last column. And then I can change the titles. So we've got outlining and drafting, and I can change the colors. In these, I will have my pages. So I can just do page, and I can name it idea 1. There we go. And I can go back, right? In outlining, I can have a page and I can name it idea 2. and I go back, and let's say I have something in drafting as well, and I'll go to page, and I'll be like project 1, because it is a full-fledged project, let's say. I can then also change the icons like I did here. Then I obviously have 3 more, revising, querying, and shelved. So let's just drag and copy this to revising, drag and copy this to querying, and drag and copy. Oh, I guess I don't have a space. There we go. And I think shelved was in blue. Let's say I have some ideas in there. So page. Nice. So this is now our setup. And as you can see, it looks pretty much exactly the same as this setup. So that's how you do that. I think I need a space here. So I might drag this text and put it here so that there's a little bit more space. And you can also change the size of your column. So you can say this column needs to be smaller and this one smaller and this one bigger, for instance. You can change that, right? So currently they're all the exact same size. And then once you've got this set up, you can then do exactly what we were doing earlier. You're in a page and you can start taking notes as much as you want. And then the last thing I'm gonna teach you in this session is creating a gallery, because that's essentially what I use a lot for my world building, for my book ideas, for anything else. So you can see in my current book ideas that we're working with a gallery. So how we do this, let's go in book ideas. And first of all, this is also a full width page. So we're going to do that. Full width, small text. Maybe we want to keep it into serif. I don't know. You can select whatever you want. To create a gallery is a database. So I'm going to do gallery, and it will tell you that this is called gallery view, because this is a database and you can view your database in several ways. It creates a new database, which is essentially a new page. It just exists within this page. And in my new database, I will call it book ideas database. And I don't want a double title, so I'm going to click on the 3 dots and I'm going to hide database title. There we go. So we've got the gallery view and we haven't created any pages yet. So every time you create something new, a new item inside of a database, it creates a new page. It's as simple as that. So create new page, and this will be idea number 1. And you click off and you can see you can create another one, and this will be idea number 2, right? And then you can create as many as you want, and this is your database. Say you want to see a list of them, you can create a new view here. So at the top you have this little plus sign, and you can say, I actually want to see a list of all of my ideas. So I'm going to create a list view, and it just lists them. This is literally the exact same page. It exists in both ways. So you can click on it and it'll open on the side panel here. If you go in your gallery view, your idea 2 is here. It opens in the middle panel, but it's the same page. So here it is. If I click off and I go on my lists and click on here, it says that because it's the same page. The same page, exclamation mark. And I click off, close it, sorry. And I go in my gallery view and you can see that the wording here has changed to, here it is, the same page. You can also add another view, which is a table format, which could be useful for book ideas, because then you can have other items within this. So you have your name for your idea, you have when it was created, you can get rid of that if you don't want that. Let's say I don't want that. Delete the property, you will not have this information anywhere else again. So it will be deleted in all of your views. So if I delete it, and I go in my gallery view, I don't have a date anymore, but I can re-add it. I can say date, publication date, I think this is a suggestion, but I think, oh, created time, that's what it was created time. So if I click on it, it gives me back the created time, and if I go in my table, this is back here. It's been re-added. So I can delete it because I don't want it, but as you can see, deletes it everywhere. You can add tags, and you can say this is a fantasy idea, for instance. This creates a new tag, and I can change the tag to blue, for instance. And I can say my first idea was actually a thriller. I like yellow, so I'll keep it in yellow. Oops, I did not click on it. There we go. Then you can filter it by tag and say, I, in this little filter here, want to see by tag only my fantasy ideas, and then only your fantasy ideas appear, right? You can then delete the filter, and you just see again all of your ideas. So that's how many views you can get. I currently only have a gallery view because I don't really care. It's just ideas. It's usually bullet points, so that's all I need it for. How do I make it look pretty? There's barely any aesthetic added to this. It's simply by adding an image. So Project Alien, I just added this image inside of the page, and that's what makes it look good. So if I'm in here, I will do image. You can then upload an image that's on your desktop. You can embed a link, so that would be from another page online that exists with that image, or you can go to Unsplash as well. I think we said this was a thriller. Some spooky images. So let's say this is an image I want for my thriller, right? Perfect. And my second idea is a fantasy one. So above the text, I will go image, and I will go to Unsplash and type fantasy and see what comes up. Okay, there's some cool castles and stuff. This is quite cool. I like that. That's really cool looking. So here we go. Here's my two ideas with actual images. Let's say I want to go further and change the icons as well. You can go in here, and this is a thriller, so I'll put the little knife again. This is a fantasy, so I will use the little stars, and I'll put them in blue because the image is bluish. There we go. Here's how you can classify all of your book ideas and how you can make a gallery. It's super simple. And now when I go back to my writing page, I've got all of these empty pages that we've created together. In my book ideas, I actually have this gallery. So we could stop here and we would have a perfectly fine setup for our writing projects, or we could go further. And this is the new version that I have recently reworked of my writing setup, with a few more elements that are beautifying it and also just making it more usable for me. The first thing that we can see here is that I'm using some GIFs, and this is the cool thing about Notion if you want to beautify it, is that you don't have to use an image. You can use GIFs and they're animated and you will see the animations. However, you do need to find something that's high quality enough. My personal favorite is to go on Pinterest, and on Pinterest you type Notion header GIF, for instance, and you will find some that are perfect for what you need. Not all of them are the right size, not all of them are the right format, but you can experiment and play around. I have downloaded a bunch. Let's do this one, and we won't really see much of the text that is below. So I can reposition it, I can move it up so we see the text, or I can move it down so we don't see the text. I think I'm going to move it down, quite a bit down, so that if I resize my window and you see more of the banner, we still don't see the text, we just see the stars animated, which is what I want. You can change your emoji to match whatever color you've got off your banner. I sometimes do that, so I'll go in book, and I'll select like the blue one, for instance, which I did here. And you can see this is more pastel-y colors, but it gives something similar as a vibe. Then the next thing I have done to achieve this look is I've got a little section up top with 3 columns, and then we go into a dashboard. So we'll start with our 3-column section. I'll simply do a return after my title and slash columns, and you will see you have the options to select different size columns. So I'll do 3, and then here for the first one I'll do slash again, and I'll do call out, and I want to make this one and this one, which are both call outs. So the one all the way on the right is my useful links, which I already have here pretty much, so I can kind of just So I can just, you know, select them. If I manage to do this, here we go, select them all and drag them in here. I do want to have a little title, so we can say useful links. And if you keep it as text, it will just appear as text. If you have something like my world building one here is a level 3 header, then it will appear in your contents list on the right hand side. So we could make it into heading 3, and then you will see here it appears as useful links. And then return / divider, and we can add a little line to keep it clean, and I can just go back so that we can delete that space. I'm going to change the emoji, the icon, to be this little plus sign, and we'll just make it blue because everything's quite blue at the moment. And I'll change these icons to be blue as well. So this is this little book, blue. So option, click and drag this divider so that I can copy it over there, and that creates a little bit more of a section. Okay, so this is one item in my 3 column section, but I want it to be all the way on the right, so I'm just going to move it here. And then here we're going to place an image, and again we can use a GIF if we want to. We can use, this is another one that's quite nice, maybe we'll use this one. And then finally we have 2 elements that have been put into one. So first we need another call out, and we are gonna get rid of the emoji, so we just go to the top and click remove. And we're gonna change the color. Instead of the default background, which just shows an outline, we are gonna put it in blue. And then here I'm gonna do quote, and this is where we can add a little quote. So the quote I'm currently using is a quote from Vincent van Gogh, and it is in French, La réussite est parfois l'aboutissement de toute une série d'échecs, which means success is sometimes the result of a string of failures. You only get to a place of success once you have failed a few times, but we can select something else if we want. So writer's inspirational quote. I like this one, the first one. That's so basic, but it's so true. You can always edit a bad page, you can't edit a blank page. So if I go here, I type the quote, and then in regular text, I will add that this is the author of the quote, and I copied it in italics as well. So I didn't have to do that, but you can italicize things here. Now I will drag all of this and drop it, ooh, there we go, drag and drop it inside of my call out, and I can reduce the space if I want to. I can then change the size of my columns by going in between them and moving this little thing. So for instance, if I want the quote to be longer, but I quite like that things appear more similar in height in this version. So I think we're going to attempt that by simply adding a space above the quote. Did I have one below? Yes, I have also a space below. There we go. I think that kind of does the trick. And finally, I'm going to make this quote italics and blue. There we go. There we go. So we have our initial setup, and now we can create our dashboard. So the next thing that I've got is this little dashboard, and then as I scroll down, I have what we already have, which is our projects with a world building section and all of our different categories of ideas, outlining, drafting, etc. The main difference I have here is that I have numbered them. And that we also have a header above them. So we are going to create that first simply by dragging the space here so we can have a long space, and we're going to do divider again. So we have a line, another space, and then heading 2, and this can be projects. And we will change the color of the background of it. we can make purple, for instance, add a little space and make this a purple text color. So we have this world building. This world building, we are just going to transform into heading 3, and we can add a divider below it. There we go. And then here we will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And why is that nice? Because again, we then have the numbers here, and it's quite easy to follow where we want to go. They're unfortunately not in order because I think it goes up to down to then back into the second column, etc., which is unfortunate. Otherwise, you can still click on them and know where you're going. So you can go to outlining, you can go to ideas, you can go to world building, you can go back to your useful links. Next, let's delete all of these extra spaces we have here, and we're gonna create another section. So we're gonna do heading 2, and this is gonna be our dashboard. This is where the divider line is. We can change the color background. We'll do a blue, a little bit of space, and make this text also blue. There we go. In our dashboard, we essentially have 2 main elements. We have a Spotify playlist, which is dead easy to do. Just do slash, and you do embed, and you select this embed, and then you just need a link. So I will go into my Spotify playlist and say, for instance, I would like to use my Space Princess Project playlist. I can use any playlist. Just click on this 3 dots, share, copy link. There we go. I can move this back, and we can now paste the link, embed, and you now have a Spotify playlist. But I would like this to be in 2 columns. So I am just gonna add, I'm gonna basically add a little bit of space here and move this empty space to the right of my playlist. And then I can again do this dragging thing to move this and change the size of it. I can change the size of like the height or length of the playlist as well here by dragging this thing. Now that I have this, we're going to make another call out. This will just be a default background one. And in this call out, we're going to create this table. And this table is actually a database. So inside of the call out, I'm going to do slash database, and we're going to do database inline, of course. And this is creating a new one. So this is our writing projects database, but we don't need to see this big title. So we can hide the database title, and we can name the table view. So the view is going to be projects status. There we go. And now we can put in our project names. So we create a new page for each, which is going to be project 1. I don't want to see these icons, so simply I click on this name section, and I'm going to toggle this to not show the page icon. And I'm going to name this to project. There we go. So now we have our project names. We're going to add a property, and this property is going to be a number. And this is what we're doing here is I just want to see the status of how far I am into each project so I can keep track of it, but I'm going to manually change it myself every single time. There is no automation here. So it's still quite simple, relatively easy to copy me. So instead of number, we're going to call this status, and we're going to edit the property. And in edit property, we can change 2 things here. The first is that instead of showing a number, we're going to show a bar. You can change the color of the bar. So we're using a lot of blues here and purples. Maybe we'll make this one purple. Dividing by 100, and we can show the number as well. And instead of it being a number, we're going to click here and change that to a percent. This will allow us to say 100% and you can see 100%, or 50% and you can see 50%, both the number and the bar itself. So if I unclick this, let's say our project 1 is 80% done. So I'm just going to put 80 and this is what shows up. Let's say our project 2 is 20% done. This is what is going to show up. And let's say our project 3 is 10% done. And now that we've got these, you can obviously move and change the size of these columns as you wish. We're going to add a third property, which I personally like to know where I'm at in the project to understand what the percentage means. So we're just going to change it to a select. We can use this one as a suggestion from the AI, which is project status. And here you're going to add whatever status you're at. So say 80% is draft 3 is done, but you haven't finished the last draft 4. So I'm going to put draft 3 and say 20% is draft 1 is done and with beta readers. So I'm going to put draft 1 with betas. And say your 10% means that you're currently writing draft 1, or maybe you're outlining and you're starting the draft. So let's say outline, for instance. You can click on these and in the 3 dots, you can change the color or change the name if you've changed your mind, or delete it if you've changed your mind. So let's say outline is yellow, for instance. There we go. And you can see here, these you can open and you can add information in there if you would like to. I'm not doing this. What I have done is you can see mine are underlined, and if I click on one, it takes me there. So how to do that is simply by copying and pasting the link. So say project 1 is this one. I'm going to right click it, copy link, and then double click until I've selected the whole text and Command V or Control V to paste it. And now if I click on this, it takes me to project 1, which we've left as an empty page. But that's all it takes, is just how to link them. So I can go back here and say that project 2, right click, copy link, and Command V, paste it. And now you can see that it's an active link. And that's it. And that's literally everything that I have done, except I've also added an image at the very bottom. And you can do the same. All you need to do is create a little bit of space, image, upload file, and let's say I want to use this timer, this little hourglass, and that's it. And you can, you know, make it smaller, make it the full width, which is what I did, etc. And that's the end of your page. And that's how you create your dashboard. And that's it for this first lesson in Notion. I hope this wasn't too quick or too complex, and I hope that it gave you a general idea of how you can use Notion as a writer without going too far into it, so that you can just start slow, because that's literally how I started using Notion. I don't think you have to immediately know all of the ways to make it super aesthetic, all of the more complex equation stuff or anything of the sort. You can start slow. You can start with the basics, because this is at its core a note-taking app. The reason I really like it is because I can make it what I want, and so that works for me. If this doesn't work for you, you don't have to use it. You absolutely don't. You can use anything else that works for you. I just like knowing all of my notes are centralized somewhere, and I find it really useful to refer back to my world building notes in particular, because once I have found a way to organize them in a way that makes sense while I'm revising, it is so useful to me to be able to jump back. I hope you did enjoy this lesson and that you found it useful and that this helped you somewhat. And if you did like that, consider subscribing to my channel, because I will be doing this as a series. So there will be more videos coming up. And on that note, I will see you guys in the next one.